guys, let's try this one more time. We are having Homework Monday on a Wednesday. The reason for that is I recorded this whole video on Monday morning and then there were no audio on my video. So yeah, I was a bit irritated and I couldn't do it all over because then we had load shedding and the power went out and I couldn't use any of my lights and yeah, just frustrating. But anyway, here we are having Homework Monday on a Wednesday. And for you guys that's new with the channel, Homework Monday is all about fishing tips and tricks. We discussed a little bit of fishing tackle and gear. Just to take a little break from the rod discussions, I thought this week I will show you my trays that I use for cob, as well as the complete setup from the length of the trays, the hook sizes, the swivel sizes, the mono thickness, and I don't know if I mentioned the length of the hook snoots and the trays. So everything that you need to make a cob trays to catch a cob, like you've seen in that intro, I'll show that to you right now. So just before we go into this video, I just want to mention, guys, that we really need to protect our cob species and practice catch and release as far as possible. I'm not saying that you shouldn't keep a cob or fish to eat, but what I'm saying is we need to release as much as possible, especially the big fish. If you really want to keep a cob, I've got no problem with that, but try and keep it in the range of like a 2 to 4 kilo cob. Don't kill those big cob. Cob only start to breed and get sexually matured at 1 meter of length. I don't completely agree with the legislation that we currently have in South Africa. I think there should be a minimum as well as a maximum length on cob that you're allowed to keep. But I don't want to go into that. That's a whole other discussion. Guys, this is a species really close to my heart and it is a dream fish for any angler in South Africa to catch, and every angler wants to catch a big cob. But if you're not going to protect the species, there's not going to be any big cob for anyone to catch in the future. My son is 8 years old and he loves cob fishing, and he already has the mindset of catching fish and releasing them for the future. And that is the mentality that we need to get through to young anglers and any angler out there on in the angling community. And I really want my son one day to catch the size cob that we are currently catching. Although the numbers have declined a lot, we need to protect that species right now for the future, otherwise we're not going to have any cob. So that's the reason why I'm saying this is, guys, I am showing you guys some tips and some tricks on how to fish for cob and how to target cob. I want you guys to actually catch more cob and be more successful in your cob fishing, not to kill more cob, guys. I don't want that blood on my hands. So I really ask you guys, please release as much as possible. Hence the saying and the slogan on my channel, teach, preach, catch and release. This channel is all about conservation and sustainable fishing and ethical fishing ways. So guys, please, if you support me in the channel, please support catch and release. I will highly appreciate it. But enough said, let's get into the video and help you guys catch some more cob. So first off, I don't know the exact lengths of my traces. I'm so familiar with my traces, I just go like this and okay, that's long enough, okay, this is how long I need, and I cut it off and I make my trace. But for you guys that are really analytical and wants to know the exact measurements, I brought my measuring tape, so I'm going to measure my traces so that you guys know exactly how long it should be. Like a tip for you guys, if you're using a soft measuring tape, old Maxima spool, leader spool, your tape fits in there perfectly. It doesn't tangle up and messy all over the place, because it's always like a bundle of mess and yeah. Anyway, let's get into the video. So I use different thickness of mono and different hook sizes when I'm targeting cob. It all depends on the size of cob that I'm targeting and how big or how strong the sea is and how flat the sea is, obviously. So the general trace is exactly the same. The only thing that's different is the hook size, the thickness of the mono, and the swivel size. So bear in mind that when I walk you through this whole trace setup, that the trace for the smaller cob is exactly the same. It's just a smaller hook. I'll discuss it throughout the video as we go along. So for this video, I'm gonna make the trace that I use for big cob. Like I said, it's exactly the same as for smaller cob. The only reason why I'm using The big cob trace is because it's a bigger hook and it's a thicker mono, and it's just easier to show that to you guys on camera. It's just easier to film. So we're going to start off with our hook. For big cob, I like to use a 9.0 BKK inline. A lot of the guys use offset circles like the Fusions or the offset BKKs. It is all personal preference. I just like the inlines. They work well for me. I've had great success on them, and if something works for me, I don't like to change. But you can use your favorite hook. Just gauge it up to it so it's a similar size as a 9.0 BKK. So when I fish for smaller cob or just general cob fishing, I use a 7.0 BKK. That is for when I'm targeting like any size cob and I'm throwing onto a bank in nice working water. I want to catch any cob from like 2 kilos and up. Usually in those working waters with a small chocker bait, the targeted cob that you, or the size cob that you're targeting is like 2 kilos to 10 kilos. But if you hook a big cob like a 30-40 kilo cob, you will land it on that tackle and you will land it on a 7.0. It will hook it perfectly in the corner of the mouth, and you will land your fish. But when I'm going for big cob, I like to use a 9.0 BKK. Because we're using bigger baits, generally we use like half of a ocky or a whole ocky or 2 big ocky legs that we make a bait out of, or a big chocker bait with a chocker head, or we use live mullets, because your hook size needs to be in relation to your bait size. You don't want a tiny small hook on a big bait, because then your hook is not going to be fully exposed or exposed enough for the circle hook to do its job and hook the fish. So yeah, your hook size needs to be in relation to your bait size. And then also when I make my trace for the bigger cob, I like to use like a 0.85 or 0.90 hook snoot. And when I use the 7.0 for smaller cob or for any size cob when I'm targeting with smaller baits, mostly because I need more distance, I use a 0.70 or 0.75 hook snoot. Once again, you don't want your hook snoot to be too thick on a thinner hook or a smaller bait. The reason why I'm using a thicker hook snoot for bigger cob is that if you might have a longer fight with the cob, and when you're fighting a big cob, you'll actually feel the teeth of a cob. If the cob won't bite you off, but the line shoots from the teeth, one tooth to another tooth, and like as he shakes his head and turn around, you can actually feel the line rubbing on its teeth, and eventually it can rub through a thinner hook snoot. So that's why I like to use a thicker hook snoot. But that's not to say that with a thinner hook snoot you're not going to land a fish. You will land it, but I just like to play safe when I'm targeting big fish. We're going to start off by doing a snell knot on your circle hook. This is not your normal snell knot. I do a slightly different one. There is a video on how to make the snell knot on my channel, but I'm going to show it to you guys very briefly now again, just to recap on that. But if you haven't seen that video, go and check it out. It is on my channel. It will be underneath Tackle Tuesday playlist, or underneath knots and leaders, or how to make traces. So it will be in one of those playlists. Okay, let's start off. So you're going to take your piece of trace. You're going to put the one end of the mono facing up and the one end of the mono facing down. Just make sure this is out of your way. Then you're going to pinch it between your two fingers. You start at your index finger, working your way down around the shank of the hook, as well as around all of the mono, like 4 to 6 times. Just keep it firmly in place, and then you just hold on to the bottom tag end, and you're going to pull the top end. You pull it all the way through. Just make sure that you don't kink your line. Pull it through, and as it comes through, just secure it. Wet your line a little bit. Shouldn't use your teeth, but yeah. Anyway, then just secure it all the way up. Now you can see that knot is already tight around the shank of the hook. We're just going to cut our tag end off. Going to leave like 2 or 3 millimeters. And then, really important, we go from the back of the hook, coming out on the front of the eye of the hook, like that. Okay, so So remember guys, we're not trolling our bait. This is just to get a better hook up on your circle hook. It just allows the hook to turn better into the corner of the mouth of the fish. If you can imagine, that is the corner of the mouth of a fish. Yeah guys, this has been working really well for me. And now we're going to tie on our swivel. Really important with the swivel and swivel sizes, you need to choose the right size swivel that is applicable to the thickness of your leader of your trace. You can't just go and take any swivel. You don't want your swivel to be too big and too bulky, and you also don't want your swivel to be too small. So the problem with thicker line and a smaller swivel is that the swivel is so thin that it can actually cut through the trace under pressure. So you don't want that to happen. Like I said, you need to keep your bait size and your hook size in relation. You need to keep your hook snoot and your swivel size in relation as well. So just to let you guys know, the swivel sizes that I use on a 0.70 hook snoot with my general carp trace, with smaller baits using the 70 circle hook, I like to use a number 3 Japan power swivel, and on your 0.85 or 90 hook snoot or 1 mil hook snoot, I like to use a number 2 Japan power swivel. These Japan power swivels, they're a little bit more expensive than your normal barrel swivels, but you save money at the end of the day. They just last a lot longer, and yeah, they're incredibly strong. Anyway, I tie this with a figure 8. I'll quickly show you how I tie my figure 8. Put your swivel onto your line, you create a little loop, and then I go like three wraps around my index finger, and I take it off and I push it through from the swivel side downwards towards your hook. Now you're going to open your knot, and as you got it open, you can see the figure 8 starting to form, and you're going to pull. You keep your hands in the 2 lines, not applying pressure directly on the swivel there, because then you're going to kink your line. So put your hands in and then form your knot by pulling on this end and then that end, while keeping that tag end firmly in your hand. Quickly wet your knot and then slide it all the way to your swivel. Go. And there we go. Now what I usually do, that little clip on your sinker, I take that, I clip that into the eye of my swivel, and then I secure my knot, and you'll see it will go neatly into place. That's our knot right there. Once again, take your tag end off. So just for you guys to show you the length of this hook trace. See, I just normally go, yeah, that's long enough, let's go fish. But for you guys that wants to know, I'm going to measure that. That is exactly 60 centimeters long. So my hook trace to the swivel, 60 centimeters. And then guys, what we do is, if you used 0.90 here for a big carp trace, we're going to use 0.90 again. If you use 0.70 for general carp trace, you're going to use 0.70 again. So basically this section you're going to use the exact same thickness as your hook snoot. So then again, so I know I need about this much. Cut it off. I'll measure that for you guys again. I'm not going to show you the knot again, but we're tying a figure 8 onto the opposite side of our hook trace. There we go. Got the tag end off. So now we have your hook, 60 centimeters of mono, your number 3 or number 2 depending on the size of your hook snoot, Japan power swivel, and then about this much of another piece of mono. And then we're going to take a little bead, you're going to slide that onto our piece of mono that we just tied on. And then I want to show you guys this. You can use just a swivel and slide it on here. You can just take a swivel and slide it on here, number 4 or number 5 Japan power swivel, but I like to make my own little T-swivels. You can buy some T-swivels if you want to, but if you want to make your own, I'm quickly going to show you how to make your own T-swivels using a cotton bud. All that you need is a cotton bud, a lighter, and something to cut the cotton bud with. So we're going to push it through the eye of the swivel, and we're going to burn the one end. Not too much, just keep it like 5 millimeters away and move it closer, just so that it creates a little edge there for the swivel not to slip off. Then we're going to go like 4 to 5 millimeters, and we're going to cut the piece of cotton bud off. Just make sure your cotton bud is still in place, and then I think this is a little bit long, make it a little bit shorter. Now we're just going to burn the opposite end again, so you guys can see what is happening. Okay, so there we go. That is just to protect this piece of mono that the swivel is sliding on, not for that swivel to cut through the mono if you get stuck or something might happen, or for some reason your sinker gets stuck and there's pressure on it. I like to play safe, guys. And we're just gonna add our T-swivel, and then another bead. The second bead is optional, but I like to put on 2 beads. So now you've got a bead, a T-swivel, and another bead. See right there, sliding on this piece of mono right here, and that's where we're going to attach our sinker trace to, but we'll get to that now shortly. Okay, and then again, figure 8, a number 2 Japan power swivel, because you're using 0.90. If you're using 0.70, remember you use a number 3. Once again, another figure 8. Okay, secure it. Tag end off. Okay, so this is where our sinker trace is going to be attached onto that sliding swivel right there, but we're not going to do that just yet, and I'm going to explain to you guys why. Firstly, I'm going to add my dingle dangle. Okay, if you guys want to know how I make these dingle dangles, there is a video on my channel on how to make these. It will be under the playlist everything cob, everything Mulloway. There's a lot of tips and tricks and some bait demos on how to actually use the dingle dangle as well. So you're just going to hook it through the dacron, and there it is on. Now we're going to add a little bit of foam. The foam is there for 2 reasons. First reason, it's a little bit of buoyancy for your bait to float just above the bottom of the sea floor, and then secondly, it adds a little bit of body to our bait when we're building our bait. So to add it, we're just going to cut a little section like this big. It should be the length of your dangle, and your loop still being exposed. The whole loop should be exposed when you're putting on your little piece of foam. And we're going to split it like halfway open, not completely open, just like halfway or 2/3 open. Like a little cut there, open, and we're going to slide our dingle dangle into that. I'm going to take latex cotton. Then we're going to take latex cotton, nice and stretchy. Some of the guys like to use super glue there and super glue it together. I just use latex cotton, and I just close it up to keep it in place. Remember guys, the tighter that you put your cotton on, the less buoyant your float is going to be. So just a little bit to keep it closed, not too tight, and then break it off, and there we go. there's our dingle dangle on. Now we're going to tie our sinker trace on. Why we do our sinker trace after we attach the dingle dangle, because we don't know the exact length of our dingle dangle and the size of the bait we're going to use. So we put our dingle dangle on, then we just use a normal blood knot. This is usually, my sinker trace is usually like a 0.60 or 0.55 or 6.5, but it's generally lighter or way lighter than my hook snoot and the rest of my trace, so that if my sinker might get stuck for some reason, then I can break it off while I have a fish on, and I'm not going to lose my fish, and I'm only going to lose my sinker, and I can still fight my fish. Okay, normal blood knot on that little T-swivel that we created, and then we're going to measure the length of our sinker trace. So your sinker trace is going to be like 3 or 4 centimeters longer than your dangle or your hook snoot, and I cut it off. Just leave a little bit of mono for you to tie your sinker on. You can use a sinker clip here if you want to. I just normally tie it directly to my sinker, just again with a blood knot, double blood knot, and there we go. The sinker is attached. Okay, let me just get this wire over, and I'm going to give you one really important tip regarding sinkers and what sinkers to use for carp. You can't just use any sinker, and I'm going to explain that to you guys now. I just want to show you the purpose of the dingle dangle and the sinker. So there you go. The sinker trace is slightly longer than your hook trace, and the reason for that is you're going to clip in your dingle dangle onto that little clip there, onto your sinker, like that. So when you cast, it's going to travel through the air as a unit, and you're not going to have your bait trailing behind and swirling all around the place and getting tangled up with the rest of your trace. And also it's minimizing resistance through the air when it's traveling, so you're going to get a lot more distance if you throw your bait like a unit like that. So as it hits the water, that hook is going to unclip and it is floating around, and the carp is able to get to it. Okay, so I said I want to mention something really important regarding your sinkers. So guys, I don't like to use cone sinkers when I'm fishing for carp. I also don't like weed eater sinkers, because the weed eater sinker is not able to clip over, and a cone sinker just drags along the bottom all the way, and it's just, yeah, you lose a lot of fish when you use the wrong sinker. And the reason why I'm saying that is when you use a wire sinker, you can set the tension of these wires to clip over. So as soon as you put pressure on the sinker, it can clip over. So this wire should be as loose as possible, so that it can clip over as easy as possible, and it should be just enough to keep your bait in one place and not to clip over while you're waiting for a bite. The reason why I'm saying that is if this wires are not clipping over while you're fighting the fish, it's dragging all along the bottom, and it's getting hooked in the sand, getting out of the sand, into the sand again, and as that carp shakes, it can be hooked in the lip, and it can shake the hook more easily, and you can lose your fish. But if this wires clip over, once you have the fish on, it's just going to drag freely on the bottom, and it's not going to get stuck into the sand or into anything, or even sometimes what happens, people throw the traces off or the lines off or break off, and you can hook into that. If this is unclipped, it's going to drag freely, and it's not going to hook into any structure, and you're going to be more directly in contact with the fish, and it's not going to shake the hook that easily. So guys, it's really important to remember this. I think I didn't mention, sorry, one thing guys, I think I forgot to mention the length of this trace on top here. So to recap the trace, we've got our 60 centimeters of hook trace, hook snoot right here, your swivel, and then your power swivel, then a bead T-swivel that we made, and then another bead, and that is our sinker trace sliding up and down on this piece of mono that we added right here on the top, and it's going to slide all the way up to that swivel there. The reason for the beads is for that swivel when the fish is taking line, or when you're holding your bait in the water just waiting for bite, or doesn't get stuck on that knot on either of the two swivels, so it can move freely. Okay, so here we have the top section, and I'm just going to measure that to show you guys how long it is. It's usually like a meter, 1.2 meters, 1.1 meters. Yeah, this one is just under a meter, like 2 or 3 centimeters under a meter. I usually do it like 1 meter to 1.2 meters. It all depends on your style of casting. So this can vary from person to person, from angler to angler. This is just how I fish it. I'll actually prefer it a little bit longer, but this is fine. You can use it like this. But the longer your drop is when you cast, the longer this section can be. So if you're not used to throwing a long drop when you throw, because this swivel should be at the tip ring when you cast. So just before you cast, when you clip your bail arm over, this is going to be like this much out of your tip ring. And obviously, if you can't throw a trace that long, you can shorten this. Don't shorten your hook snoot. Don't shorten this. Keep it at this length. Rather shorten this section if you can't throw a long drop. If you can throw a longer drop, you can make this longer, so you can play around with this to find it where it's comfortable for you. So now we're going to our leader and our reel. So this is the reel that I'll use. I usually fish with 30-pound braid for cob, and I just want to pull this off to show it to you guys. So imagine this is now on my rod. That's my 30-pound braid main line. On that I attach a 80 or 100-pound braided leader via FG knot. You guys can see there's the FG knot right there. Okay, so it's 30-pound onto 80-pound or 100-pound braided leader, and usually I use like 3 arm lengths of braided leader. That's 1, 2, 3. So it's 3 full arm lengths that I use, and a little bit extra just to tie my knot. So that braided leader is running through your guides, and you're going to attach it to your swivel, to your trace. And I usually attach that with the exact same knot that I use on my swivels. I use a figure 8, but I do it like 8 turns opposed to 3 turns. And it's never let me down. I've got some really big fish on it, and not just cob, really big bronzies and black rays and all sorts of things. And that's the knot that I use. So the leader, the braided leader that we're using, is just a little bit of protection through if there's any structure in the water, as well as that if you're going to tie 30-pound directly to a swivel or 2.90, it's not going to be as strong as when you taper it from a 30 to a 80 or 100-pound, tying it to your swivel. Another reason for that is that when you're going to cast, I should have actually used a darker leader. That knot should be on your spool when you throw. The reason for that is that you want this braided leader, if you're using a bionic finger, to be wrapped around your bionic finger and not your main line, which is 30-pound. It may damage the 30-pound braided leader, so the braided line. So we want our braided leader to be wrapped around the bionic finger. And if you're casting with a glove or with your finger, you've got much less chance of cutting through the glove, of cutting through your finger when you're casting from a 80-pound or from a 100-pound than when you're casting from 30-pound. So yeah, and your leader also shouldn't be too long. Your leader should only be, prior to your cast, should be like maximum 2 turns around your spool to about 1 turn. I usually do like 1.5 turns around my spool before my cast. That That just ensures that you don't get any rod slaps in your cast or during your cast, or wind knots or anything like that. So yeah guys, that is it for the video. So that is my complete trace that I use for cob. So like I said, it's basically the same trace that I use for big cob and smaller cob, for live bait and for smaller baits. Only difference is the size of the swivels and the thickness of the mono. So recap again, your swivel, Japan Power swivel, either a size 3 or a size 2 depending on the thickness of your mono. Then 1 meter to about 1.2 meters of mono with your sinker trace with a swivel and 2 beads sliding on that. Then we go on to another swivel, same size as the top one, then about 60 centimeters of hook snoot, exact same thickness as you used here, and then a snell knot to a 9.0 or 7.0 BKK with your dingle dangle. And your dingle dangle is going to differ to the size of the bait that you're going to throw. So obviously the bigger the bait, the bigger the dingle dangle, the smaller the bait, the smaller the dingle dangle. And I like to use Dacron because it's nice and flexible, and yeah, I don't like the wire dangles. And then our sinker trace is slightly longer than our hook trace so that we can clip it in. And that's it for the cob trace. And guys, remember, like I said in the beginning of the video, I'm showing you guys this to catch more cob, hopefully, or to catch more fish, not to kill more fish. We need to protect this species, guys. It's really important to me to protect this species. A cob is really close to my heart and we don't want to kill those things. But yeah, you guys know it. I preach it every time, every day, and we need to do it. But yeah guys, all the tackle that you saw that I used now can be purchased from Still Fishing. They have an online shop with really great prices, really great service. I can really recommend them. They are big supporters of zoolookfishing, and I like to support them as well. So have a look at the online shop. It's www.stillfishing.com. Use my promo code ZLF. Like I said, they support zoolookfishing, so a little bit of every purchase that you guys make goes towards zoolookfishing, and it helps fund this channel, and it helps me to buy a little bit of bait, fuel and tackle and gear to make these videos for you guys, because it's not really cheap doing this, but it's not about the money. You guys know it. It's all about the passion of fishing. Anyway, I would really appreciate it if you guys can support them. The link to the website will also be down in the description. Go and check it out. There will be a little bit more information in the description with what videos to have a look at regarding cob fishing, as well as go and check out the playlist on my channel, everything cob, everything Mulloway, and you can find some tips and tricks right there. So yeah guys, that's it. That's the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Give it a like, give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe. Cheers guys.